How's it going? My name is Brent from Encore, and today I'd like to go over with you a little bit about how we prep a panel for paint protection film. And so let's go ahead and get started with that. So the thing that we're going to do is we're going to wash the vehicle first, and then we're going to spray out all of the edges or any crevices, any place that might hold some dirt will get pressure washed like really well. And then we're going to pull the vehicle inside. We're going to give the vehicle one more wipe down, and then we're going to go over the vehicle with a clay bar. So this is what we use here. It's just regular duty clay bar. This is from a local business that makes car care products. So when it comes to clay barring, I'm no expert. But I've been, clay barred a lot of cars. So what you do is go ahead and get the material, flatten it out a little bit. And then I put it right on my palm. You want to keep everything really wet so it doesn't stick to the paint. And also, it'll stick to your hand and stuff. So basically you're going over the paint, and if you see or feel any bumps, then you'll keep hitting that spot. Usually we're working on new cars, so we don't have much of an issue with there being a lot of contamination on the paint. Although some of the vehicles, that come over on the railroad train box cars and stuff, will have some, I call it fallout, and that's just some rust that comes off of the box car and then gets stuck in the paint. And so it'll be most noticeable on white, and then you'll have to, really go over those spots over and over again until that rust comes out of the paint or off the surface of the paint. So when, every once in a while, when I don't know how often I do it, but when I'm claying, like if I go over a panel and I do about that much, then I go ahead and take this material and fold it over on itself and then continue to use the material. And that takes any little pieces of contamination that got in there and puts it into the middle of the clay bar. That's just how I was told to do it. So we basically just go over the entire panel like this. And if you're doing a vehicle that's had a little bit of miles on it, you may notice, depending on, especially where it's been sitting, if it lives outside and stuff, you may notice that the panel gets smoother and smoother, and then that's how you can tell that the clay bar's doing its job. All right, and I've already clay barred this hood already before all this, so I'm not gonna finish the whole thing, but that's basically the process. Is I would hit every square inch with a clay bar. Once that's done, we go ahead and dry the panel off, and then we're going to wipe all the edges down with a 70% rubbing alcohol. So we just take a microfiber towel from Costco, and we take straight rubbing alcohol and just make a spot on the towel. And then just take this, and basically anywhere where I'm going to be wrapping an edge, I want to go ahead and use the rubbing alcohol, and that'll help get the edge nice and clean and remove any wax and contamination that. So if you can see, well, and actually, so this is a hood that's going to be in our showroom. We're going to do half of it with matte and half of it with gloss, but you can see there's some paint here, and then if you could see the bottom of it, you'd also see some wax splatter and stuff, and that's from it being painted. You can also see here some dirt that I've picked up underneath. We want that, when we wrap that edge, we want it to stick really well. So we want to remove any contamination underneath there, like the waxes and dirt. So every once in a while, I'll take and fold the towel over a different way and get a clean part of the towel, so I'm not rubbing the same dirty part on the underneath the hood all the way around. I believe this hood is from a Ford Fusion. All right, so once we take care of the edges, then we're gonna go ahead and get ready to install. So what I would do next if I'm bulking, which I am bulking on this, is I would measure. Now normally we'd be measuring the entire hood, but I'm going to be doing half and half as far as gloss and matte. So we can see that, you know, a 36-inch roll would be fine. I think also a 48 from end top to bottom would work. It's gonna be, that would be really close. Yeah, well anyway, we're using a 60-inch roll, and then we'll do 36 wide. All right, so before we do the final prep on the panel, I would prep this piece of material here on the wall. We use glass on the wall instead of rolling the pattern out on the panel itself. I started with window tinting, so this is, you know, this is what we use all the time in window tinting, so it just crossed over to the paint protection film. So in order to prep this and have it just ready to go, I'll go ahead and remove the backing. And basically all I'm putting on it is our slip solution. All right, so right before I'm about to put the material on here, I'm gonna get it ready to go over here, and then I will spray this down. And then go ahead and squeegee this. This is something I bought on Amazon. It's called One Pass Water Blade. And we use this, I usually just wipe the edge off, make sure there's no dirt on it, and then just swipe the, for a final clean process, this is great. All right, then we'll go ahead and cover the panel with the slip solution, and then immediately get the piece of material on there. That's why it's nice to take the backing off first, so that you have as little time as possible for contamination to land on the surface. This looks like it's gonna lay down pretty good. We have a finger here. This should be interesting. I don't really do hoods off of the car, so normally I can do a 4-corner tack on something like this, or, I mean, it's just different when you're doing it like this. All right, so I got some slip solution on the material so that the squeegee will slide really well. Let's go ahead and squeegee this out. So the first thing I do is remove any bigger air pockets. All right, once that's done, we'll go ahead and start squeegeeing things out. So I am using quite a bit of pressure, you know, enough to kind of bend the card a little bit. All right, and then we will bring this stuff this way, and then we'll kind of work on this here. Let's kind of see, this is a really big finger, and it will be an issue. It does look like we'll be able to put a little bit of tension on this direction and have that lay down pretty well, so that's good. And that should be plenty to get rid of that finger. The rest of this looks like it's gonna go down really well. And actually, I'm just gonna squeegee back. Good overlapping strokes. Super important that you don't leave any water behind, especially with the matte finish material, because it's hard to see the water underneath there. At least with the gloss, you can, you know, it's much easier to see the water that you leave behind. But with the gloss, it's a little bit more difficult, until it turns into an air pocket after it dries, and then it's super visible. All right, and then we're gonna, on this one, we're gonna come down with it and squeegee it off the edge. All right, and then we will need to do some stretching right here, like I was saying, and let's do that now. We don't want to get all of this stuff tacked down to the corner. We want to have, you know, plenty of material where we can kind of stretch it. Let's see. What I'm going to do here is, so we use a 3-bottle install, and so we have water, rubbing alcohol, and this alcohol mixture, which is tack solution, is going to be 20% 20% of 70% rubbing alcohol, and then the rest water. And I find that the water and the alcohol are very interchangeable, and even sometimes I like just straight water better. So let's go ahead and spray some of this in here. And then we're gonna go ahead and put a little bit of tension on this to get rid of some of these fingers. All right, and that's creating a little bit of an air pocket in here, which is fine. Let's go ahead and we'll squeegee that out, or I swipe it out with my arm. I don't know what that technique is called. All right, and then I'm holding this in place down here, keeping that stretch on it while I start squeegeeing everything out. And these cards are great. I used to use, I don't have one on me right now, but I used to use the Fusion. It was a black and then a yellow, half black, half yellow card. And those work really well. But ever since these came out at SEMA last year, I've switched over to only using these cards. And I have them in two different sizes that I keep in my pouch at all times. All right, so it looks like all the moisture is out of this area, and then we just need to take care of these edges. So what I'm actually gonna do is just put my finger on this very edge and hold this down to make sure that doesn't pop up. And I'm gonna spray a little bit of tack solution underneath this edge here. I'm gonna put a little bit of tension on it to get rid of some of those fingers, although that's not even really necessary. It would have just pushed out probably without the tension. You don't want to put too much tension on it because you will then leave some kind of a stretch line. In the matte finish, that's really not such a big deal. On the gloss, it's, the stretch lines are much easier to see. You can really put a lot of stretch lines in matte finish and they're not really noticeable. All right, so let's go ahead and come back. We've got basically this whole edge is kind of coming up. And right here, let's go ahead and put some tack solution underneath that and we'll squeegee all that down. All right, oops. All right, so this part, I'm gonna go ahead and do what I call a swipe and hold. And I'm gonna need to do that right there too, because it's still popping up. This helps those areas stay down a lot better so that you don't have to worry about them popping up. So I'm swiping over the edge and then I'm holding the material, holding that edge just past the edge basically on the side of the panel, and I'm putting a lot of pressure on it. And that gets that area to stick really well so that I don't have to worry about it popping up again. All right, so let's go ahead and take care of this part now as well. And we're gonna do a swipe and hold right here. And so definitely much different doing a panel like this off of the car where it's, can move around a bit and things like that. All right, now that we've got that all down and all the edges are stuck, let's go ahead and trim. So for that, I just use a regular Olfa knife. What are these? I don't know what angle that is, but it's just the standard angle for Olfa blades. Like I said, I was a window tinner for, let's see, I think about 4, 5, 6 years before I started doing paint protection film I started doing paint protection film back in 2004. And so I'm used to these blades, and so I just stuck with them. I do see some people using like really sharp ones or carbon blades and different things, and I'm not, or even this, what is that called, a scalpel? Like this one that swivels. I've seen people use different things, but I'm sticking with the blade I'm super used to using already. So what I'm going to leave hanging over here is going to be about 1/4 of an inch. So when I'm trimming this, what I'm going to be doing is putting some tension on the material away from where the blade is cutting. And that keeps this really tight so that you get a nice straight edge. And then my other finger is running on the edge of the panel so that I'm not getting like a real wavy line around the edge. Oops, look at this. I left a little bit of water in there with an air pocket. Let's get that out. So one thing I've noticed with paint protection film, if you want to get a water bubble like that out, if you're going to squeegee it out, it's crucial that it's sooner than later. Otherwise, you're going to have to pop it with a needle or a syringe. But on gloss, if I'm going to squeegee something like that out, what you want to do is go over it really fast, like that. And that'll help when it pushes out. It'll help it leave less distortions in the adhesive. If you go real slow, you're gonna have, it's gonna look worse without question. So you just go real fast with it and put a lot of pressure. You could try with a little bit less pressure and go across it and try to squeegee it out. And if that's not working, you're gonna have to use more and more pressure until it goes out. All right, so we'll go ahead and finish cutting this all the way around. All right. So this is wanting to pop up a little bit here, so I'm going to put some tack solution, and actually let's just use the water on this one. So you can see I can still lift that up. Let's do some tack solution to see if that is harder to pull right back up. Pretty much, actually, it was a little bit more difficult to pull back up with just the water. All right, so we've got our trimming all the way around. Now we're going to rinse the edges out. Just gonna use the water on this one. Basically, we're trying to get all that soapy water out, the slip solution, and prep these edges for a pre-wrap. All right, let's go ahead and do the pre-wrap on this. And basically this just takes the edge. It's not our fully finished edge because we're still gonna need to fully wrap this and then heat seal it. But this takes our edge over and to the side, if not all the way to the bottom. And then we're able to let this just sit here and dry. And I mean, we're just gonna move right on to doing the gloss side. But if I was working on this car, once I got done with this pre-wrap, then my finish edge is basically off of the top of the panel and out of view. So if something was to happen to this edge, or when I'm pushing it down, if I happen to get a little bit of an air pocket underneath it, it's on the bottom of the panel. That just makes the wrapping part even easier. Because what I'm gonna do with this, once I'm done with this, if I was working on the cars, I would put this up, let that edge completely dry out, and then I would go ahead and come back to this later after I finished some of the other panels on the vehicle. Probably even as much as just waiting till the next morning if the car's staying overnight. I would get the rest of the car done before I came back and messed with finishing the wrap on this. So I'm basically just going right over the edge and then rolling it to the bottom just to barely underneath, and then I'm holding there, and I'm putting a lot of pressure on the card at that point. Let's see. Some of it's not fully going to stay down. I guess you could even put some more effort into it. That always seems to be enough for me though. As long as the edge isn't on the very top of the panel, then I'm fine with that. Okay, so I mean at this point all I would do if I was working on this car here in the shop, at this point I would wipe this down. I'd wipe the whole panel down in order just to take a second look at it and make sure that I didn't leave any water behind. And actually I might have done this process even before I did the pre-wrap. So we can go ahead and check our edges. I can see I left a little bit of a water pocket there. It's got a little bit of air in it is the only reason I can even see it. Okay, that looks great. We'll go ahead and get on the gloss part. All right, so let's go ahead and do this side with the gloss PPF. Since we've already clay barred it and everything, we'll go ahead and just do the final squeegee. And just before we do that, we want to remove the liner from this release liner from this material. Put some slip solution on that. We've got slip solution on there. Let's go ahead and do our final squeegee. Yeah, because of these, I wanted to see if that did any good going that direction, but because of the ridges in the hood here, that didn't really work that well. All right, okay. Because we had some fingers here and because the hood has got a shape to it, obviously, we know that the material would have rounded out a little bit at the front and back. So we're gonna have to overlap, and then I'll just trim that off later. The other thing we could do is just leave a gap here. I'm gonna end up putting some kind of sticker down the center anyway to really show people the difference between the left and the right. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll tack this side down, and then we'll start squeegeeing all this out. All right. Let's go ahead and get rid of these bigger air pockets. The problem with leaving air pockets sitting in there is especially depending on how long you're working the hood and things, you know, you go over to that side, you get that side down, then you come over to this side. Well, all these areas in here where the air pocket is all starting to dry. The adhesive is starting to dry because it's just basically exposed to the air. And the problem with that is that when you go to squeegee it out, you might hit an area that is dry underneath there and then tack that down, and you're gonna end up leaving air pockets and things underneath the material. All right, so let's get rid of some of these air pockets and fingers. Fortunately, this hood is fairly straightforward. Not a ton of stretch to it, which is really good for it not being on a car. Because I cannot do my regular processes on this. All right, let's go ahead and we're gonna squeegee basically all the way to this, and then we're gonna stretch that a little bit. So good overlapping strokes. All right, let's see what we can do with this finger here. I probably should have taken this over to here, but let's see if we can just get rid of that. So what I'm doing is kind of breaking the finger up, and then we're going to be able to get rid of that. Let's go ahead and put, I mean really I should just lift this up, would be the easier way to take care of that, would be to lift this up and move it to this corner and it'll completely go away. But let's try some other things with it in case you were unable to do that on a panel. So we'll go ahead and spray some tack solution in there. And then we'll get a little bit more slip solution on the surface. And then we'll go ahead and do a swipe and hold on this in order to get it to stay down. All right, see this part's coming back up. So that's where the swipe and hold really comes into play. It's also coming up a little bit right there. Okay, so let's see, on the other side we're able to come down to like somewhere at least right in here. So we'll go ahead and squeegee all this out. All right, let's put a little bit of tension on this and we'll start with a little bit of tack solution. So basically what we're trying to do is get rid of these fingers here. Also, what we were trying to do right here, let me just show you. We're trying to get rid of this finger. That way the air pocket is trapped in there on the hood. Okay, let's give that a shot. Then first thing is to get rid of the air pocket. Oh, I got a little something underneath the material right there. Let's see if it's in the paint. It is. Okay, that's in the paint. All right, let's do this again. A little bit of tension. All right, and then we'll do what I call this burping this out. Okay. I'm going to hold this in place with the one hand and then I'll go ahead and squeegee everything out with my other hand. So when I get close to down here where I've already squeegeed everything out, I'm going to go ahead and bring the I'm going to go ahead and squeegee this direction towards me and not squeegee through the area I've already tacked, because if you pull a bunch of water through areas you've already tacked, you will leave some distortions in the adhesive. Doesn't look like we left any water or slip solution underneath there. I'll go ahead and hold this spot on the very corner in place, and we will add some tack solution to these edges. All right, so I don't have to do a swipe and hold on this one, although I can, but I don't really have to because I have a little bit of tension on it with my hand. Now this part here, we'll need a swipe and hold in order to stay down. So let's get the moisture out first, and then we'll go ahead and give that a swipe and hold just to make certain that it doesn't pop back up. All right, and then we'll go ahead and take care of this edge. You can see here it just wants to pop back up, and that's where the swipe and hold comes into play, because this will tack that down and then we don't have to worry about it popping back up again. Otherwise, you know, you're just going to be fiddling around with it keep pushing it down, it keeps popping back up. All right, then at this point, let's go ahead and we're going to trim our edges. Then we'll do our pre-wrap, and then this will sit here until the edges are all dry, and then I'll do a final wrap on the edges where I fully wrap it around and stick it to the bottom of the hood, and then we'll go around and heat seal those edges with a heat gun to make sure that they stay down. All right, so let's rinse those edges out. Normally I use both hands to do the pre-wrap, but I'm putting a lot of pressure on the bottom edge, and because this hood isn't bolted to a car, it's moving around too much. It is important when you're squeegeeing over this edge that you're keeping really good contact with the panel as you roll that edge over. You don't want to just be, you know, it'd be a waste of time to be doing this if you're just trapping an air pocket in the edge or moisture. All right. Great, so at this point, if this was on a vehicle, I just pop the hood up and let this sit and dry. One thing I am gonna do right now is go ahead and trim off this excess. I'm just gonna go over, you know, I don't wanna go way over here because I'm not gonna be able to follow that line real well. So I'll go over to that side here in a moment. Start here and just cut down the center. If you can hear that squeak sound, that means you're getting a really good cut on the material. That's what you're hoping to hear. That means you have really good pressure. That means you're scoring that top edge really well without cutting all the way through. Let's see how we did. All right, great. All right, now when I go over this edge, I'm gonna lift the material up here a little bit so that I can cut all the way through that part. And what that does is gives me a nice spot to just start tearing the material from. Otherwise I have to break that apart. All right, we'll go ahead and just spray a little bit of tack solution down in this edge. Okay. That's a great demonstration piece for the difference between the two. All right, so we're out here behind the shop. I thought I'd just show you what this looks like out in the sun. All right, so that gives you a good idea of the difference between the matte and the gloss finish PPF. All right, so it's the next morning. This sat and dried overnight. Let's go ahead and go over the process of wrapping these edges. I'm gonna wrap them under to the bottom side, and then we're gonna flip this hood over and get a view we couldn't normally get if this was actually attached to a car. But let's go ahead and get on that. Well, let's go over something else first. All right, let's get you in here and take a look at these edges. So basically with the pre-wrap that we did yesterday, it took our edge that was going to hang overnight and took it off of the top of the material where it would normally be sitting about right there, and wrapped it to the side, and in some cases even around to a bit more of the bottom. And so, you know, that just makes things easier today, so that when we're pushing this out, we don't have to worry about leaving any air pockets on the top. Sometimes you'll have to pull it back to get those out, and we don't have to worry about that. As well as if, you know, if like some wind came up, or when somebody was moving cars around, you know, got a little bit of dust in here, that's not going to be on the top. So, you know, another thing that can happen with these edges is that, you know, when you're working on the rest of the car, when this is attached to a car, if you were to bump one of these edges, you're going to bump that over and then leave a bunch of air pockets in there. You know, if anything gets tapped a little bit, it's going to stick something lower and leave an air pocket. And so the pre-wrap also just eliminates any type of issue with that as well. So what I'm going to do is put a little bit of heat on this, and then I'm going to wrap it around to the bottom. And how I'm gonna do that, let's go over this as well. I'm gonna just take little steps basically as I go back and forth. I'm not gonna try and wrap the whole thing at one time real quick. I'm gonna go over it, and then I'm gonna go a little bit more, and then I'm gonna go a little bit more, like that. So normally it's gonna take but somewhere right around 3 swipes in order to get the material all the way down onto the bottom. So something else you might notice today is that I'm not cutting these corners at a 45. I'm going to use a little bit of a different technique on those today. And what the technique I'm going to use on those today, I call the melt method. Oh, and then I've got the heat gun at 650. That's the temperature it turns on at. I'm usually going to be, when I'm wrapping these edges, going to be working with somewhere between 650 and 700. All right, so let's finish this edge here. All right, so you can see on these corners here that we've got some excess material on the bottom, and I'll show you how with this technique, how I deal with that. So we're gonna heat it up real hot and then push it down on itself. Like so. Let's see how, let's get a time. Let's see, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000, 5, 1,000, 6. Maybe like a 6-second count. See how that, yep, 6 seconds works pretty good. 6 seconds at 650 degrees. Let's see if we can do a little bit more on this one. I mean, sometimes I'll get this so hot that it actually kind of sticks to my glove, or it kind of melts to my glove. That seems to be fine too. I mean, all this is on the underside, so we're not even getting this edge really good, you know, really hot with the heat. All right, let's take care of these two and make sure the edge is down as well. That looks fantastic. I don't know, I love that edge with this technique. And we don't have issues with it popping up. And as long as you're not overheating the material like that on the top, you shouldn't have any issues with it going bad. I mean, we have that edge out there from many, many, many years ago, and we're not having any issues with it. All right, well, you've pretty much seen this, but let's go ahead and go around this one more time and check out some of these edges and corners. Just for a little close-up, and then we'll wrap this video up. And once again, you can see the difference between the matte finish and the gloss. You can see that light that the extra light I have up right now change. All right, well, if you found something in this video helpful, please like and subscribe. We put out videos every week, and thanks for taking a look, and we'll see you on the next one.